them. We've been talking about a few of the controversies yesterday concerning the women's place in Buddhism. I have to reassure everybody that as far as even Theravada, all the major strands of Buddhism is concerned, a woman can become enlightened just as easily as a man can become enlightened. We make a distinction between the enlightenment experience and that of a Buddha. Even though the attainment is the same, the timing is different. And I've gone on record of saying that the only reason in the ancient Buddhist texts that it would say that, the Buddha is quoted as saying that a Buddha will take a man's body was only time and place. I could been on record as saying that if there was a matriarchal society, certainly the Arahat, who would be a Buddha, would take the form as a female. The body is just a vehicle. If you are going from one place to another, you would use the most convenient vehicle for your purposes. Depending upon the dominant gender of that time, that is a vehicle which a Buddha would take. So not gender specific, but just for the purposes. In a matriarchal society, I can see a female Buddha. And as such, that's only the vehicle, obviously. As such, that there is some issues of equity, of one person saying they're superior than another, which needs to be addressed because such superiority goes straight against some basic teachings of the Buddha. As far as Buddhism is concerned, we have the three conceits. I am better, I am the same, I am worse. All are considered by Buddhism to be delusory, all getting into this judgment and comparisons. So as far as Buddhism is concerned, we don't really like to having any comparisons of superiority or inferiority, but just difference. Because it's that lack of equity which does create the controversies and a bad feeling. When one group says that they are superior to the other, or their teacher is better than the other, or they are more enlightened than somebody else. And I think that if Buddhism is going to move on into the 21st century, into the Western world, I think that equity, that mutual respect, as Patrick Kearney well said yesterday, is non-negotiable. And that's also with the different yanas that sometimes we say that one particular strand of Buddhism is superior than the other, that there is a great vehicle, an inferior vehicle, that really doesn't have any place in our modern world. And so instead of saying that one vehicle is for the more intelligent and other vehicles are for the less intelligent, again, that does not wash with our experience, nor with the teachings. But in particular, we're talking about the different methods of meditation, because some people say that their method of meditation is the best and is superior than other methods of meditation, which is very nice until you find yourself doing the other type of meditation. You think, oh my goodness, I paid all this money for all these retreats, followed this teacher for so many years, and I've missed the boat. Now, of course, that makes it very disappointing, but we have to find out, is there any difference between the different parts of meditation? And I do know that some teachers actually do write in their books, or they do speak at podiums like this and say, this is the only way to enlightenment, or this is the quickest way, or this is the best way. And that is statements which do create divisions in the Buddhist world, which create disharmony, and this is what I'd like to address in this little segment. In particular, in the Theravada type of Buddhism, we have two different types of meditation which for many centuries have been at odds, it seems. And those are the jhana meditation, sometimes called samatha, and the vipassana tradition, sometimes called insight. And historians have noticed that that discussion has been going on for many, many centuries. I'll be interested to hear today that how this discussion actually applies to the Mahayana tradition, the Zen tradition, and the Vajrayana tradition, to see that what their take is on these different types of meditation. But certainly that whenever we come across people saying that theirs is the only way, there should always be alarm bells coming up. And if anyone actually quotes even suttas, because sometimes we go back to the original teachings of the Buddha as best we can know them, to find out what the Buddha actually said on these things. But when we do look at those original teachings of the Buddha as best we can know what's original, it's also very important that we don't just know what the Buddha said, we also know what the Buddha meant by taking everything in context. For those of you who know the great teacher Venerable Nyanaponika, he was one of the leading teachers of Theravada tradition in Sri Lanka, wrote many wonderful books. I did have the privilege of meeting him many years ago, while he was still alive in Sri Lanka, in the Forest Hermitage just outside of Kandy. And he once told me a beautiful piece of advice. He said, never take any portion of what the Buddha said by itself, especially those portions which could be interpreted many different ways. Don't just interpret the whole of the Buddha's teachings on one or two ambiguous passages. Instead, interpret the ambiguous passages in light of the great wealth of statements certainly made by the Buddha. And so when we look at the greater teachings of the Buddha, we actually do see the path of meditation, which was taught by the Buddha, was a path which led into deep states of stillness, into what we call the jhanas. What the Buddha actually said was that right samadhi, concentration, the eighth factor of the Eightfold Path, was nothing else than the first, second, third, or fourth jhanas. And that's repeated many, many, many times. What that really means is, and this is the reason why I'm talking like this, if our aim is for enlightenment, to find out what the Buddha saw, then we do need to take meditation to that depth. Now that's what it says in the theories, and that is in the book, and that seems to be incontrovertible. There's many arguments which we could go to on the scholastic level, and I think the evidence is so strong. Other pieces of information, such as the idea of an upachara samadhi, what's called a neighborhood concentration of fulfilling the eighth factor of the Eightfold Path. And many people who have read those early teachings know that such a word, upachara samadhi, was not ever mentioned by the Buddha. It came in the commentaries and maybe the Abhidhamma, which is certainly later than the time of the Buddha. For those of you who want some controversy, again, I have stood up in front of many monks, and I've got many comments afterwards, but I'm not just a cheeky monk. I like to stir things up to make people think. As one of my sayings, which I've been promoting recently, there are two types of religion to be found in the world. The first is that which changes the facts to fit the faith, and the other one changes the faith to fit the facts. And it doesn't matter what religion or what part of a religion, what sect of a religion one actually follows. I think the real essential Buddhism is always strong enough, courageous enough, devoted to truth enough that we will always change our faith, our received wisdom, even challenge our teachers based on the facts of our experience. And so understanding that, it's important to be able to look at what is said in those books, and no matter what is said in those books, find out when they were said, what is original, what is later. It gives you a more idea of what the Buddha actually taught, and then also match it with your experience. And it's because the monks of our tradition, especially the forest tradition with Ajahn Chah, where I grew up, did practice jhanas, and did go to those very deep states of mind that we could actually check to see the experience of those deep states of meditation, why the Buddha would actually call them in the suttas states which are conducive to the arising of enlightenment. Why the Buddha had said that there is no seeing things as they truly are without such deep states of meditation. We see that because in those deep states of stillness, we have what is called the mind being released from the five senses and the physical body, where a different type of consciousness manifests, a consciousness where we just have the mind and no more body, by which I mean no seeing, no hearing.